My older sister bought a house a couple weeks after my 18th birthday. The house itself was beautiful. It had an old country style and a rustic theme to it, which I personally enjoyed. The house was out in the middle of the country. The nearest neighbor was 5 miles up the road. It was an old dirt road, and you couldn't see the house from the highway that it was by. That was my favorite part about it. But still, it was peaceful. Now, the house had a basement that was fully furnished. It had its own kitchen, living room, 2 bedrooms, and a bathroom. That was cool as hell. The basement also had 3 doors for cars, and a nice little workshop. The upstairs part of the house had 4 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms, a large kitchen, a dining room, and a computer room with double doors that locked not only on the door handle, but with an old-fashioned lock at the top of the door on the inside of the room. The washer and dryer was in a corner by the other side of the house. It was just beyond the kitchen. There was a small little deck out on the front side of the house, which faced the highway that couldn't be seen because of the field that it was in front of, and a small deck on the side of the house where the side door was that led into our yard. There was a very large deck on the back of the house. I'm not sure how tall it was, but I know that you had to go down 22 stairs if you wanted to go down to the driveway. The house itself was incredible, and no one could believe that the previous owners wanted to sell it. Yet they had their reasons. The reasoning was that they wanted to travel across the country in their RV, because they were both retired, and it was a lifelong dream of theirs. Oh well, it was one hell of a deal for my sister. My other 2 siblings and I stayed at that house for the first time about 2 days after my sister and her husband had finished moving in. My older sister and I cooked dinner while everyone else explored the house. I had already seen it due to the fact that I was the first one she had showed it to. Aside from her husband, we all ate dinner together in the dining room in celebration of their newest milestone in life, and played with my 5-year-old nephew and 2-year-old niece. We all stood on the deck for a while after putting the kids to bed. It was so that my sister and I could have a cigarette before heading in to drink and play cards. It was, in all honesty, a perfect way to help my sister and her husband finish unpacking. The night went on as any normal night. We all would be together. My younger brother, younger sister, and I slept in the computer room that night since it was pretty spacious, and we wouldn't wake up the kids. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. I was, and still am, an intuitive person, in touch with my spirituality and such. I can access any situation, and just by the feel of the atmosphere. However, that house did not give me any bad vibes at first. I wish it would have, because I never would have stepped 1 foot into that place, had I known what was going to happen in the following year. There are reasons that I will remain unknown, but I moved in with my older sister a month before I graduated high school. Now, you have to understand that living out in the country meant that I had spotty cell phone reception. I didn't have my driver's license, and I didn't have a car. So after my sister's mother-in-law would pick me up from school, as well as my niece and nephew, and take us home, I would have to take care of them because her husband slept during the day. He worked from 10 o'clock at night until 7 o'clock in the morning. Imagine how difficult it was, at 18 years old, trying to take care of 2 small children, cooking dinner, cleaning the house and doing laundry, while trying to finish my homework. It was absolutely challenging, but somehow I managed to do it. There was a particular night about 2 weeks after I had moved in that started everything. My niece and nephew were in the living room watching cartoons and playing with their toys, while I was in the kitchen cooking dinner. It was about 5 o'clock in the evening, which was the normal time for dinner. I would peek my head out of the kitchen every once in a while to check in on the kids. I could hear them laughing and playing, so I'd go back to cooking. This was happening for about 30 minutes before I felt someone tugging on my shirt. I looked down with a smile thinking that it was my niece, wanting more juice, but there was no one there. My heart began to beat faster, due as I peeked my head into the living room to see that the kids were still playing with their toys and watching cartoons. I shook it off as a weird incident, chalking it up to being my imagination, and my worry about being home alone with the kids. I finished cooking dinner, fed both the kids, and tried to do my homework in the living room, but I had this uneasy feeling the rest of the night. It felt like someone was watching me. That was just the first of many strange things to take place in that fucking house. The next incident happened a few weeks later. My bedroom was next to the side door of the house and directly across from the back door leading to the deck. I'd always had this odd fear about doors being opened, which is silly, I know, but it legitimately freaks me out. My older sister was in the living room watching TV and drinking a glass of wine to try to wind down after a long day at work. The children were in bed and I was in my bedroom trying to finish my homework. Despite it being a Friday night, I had the television on in my bedroom, Law and Order playing in the background, even though I had my headphones in, with my rock music blasting loudly. I was so occupied with getting my probability and statistics homework done that I hadn't noticed the handle of my bedroom door twisting and turning. I heard a very distant banging on something, which caused me to take one earbud out. No noise. I put the earbud back in, and just then another bang sounded. I took both earbuds out this time, listening carefully to the weird noises just outside my room. There was the sound of scratching, which scared the holy hell out of me. I looked at my clock on the shelf above my bed to see that it was midnight, when my 5-year-old nephew screamed and came running into my bedroom. I asked him what was wrong, and the only thing the little man said was that he didn't want to sleep in his bedroom because of the man in his closet. It took an hour and a half for me to calm him down, but he finally fell asleep in my bed, while I stayed up the rest of the night watching TV and listening for any strange noises. I would occasionally step out onto the back deck with my older sister to have a cigarette, but again, my room was directly across from the door, so we're able to keep an eye out for my nephew. The third incident happened was the following day. It was a Saturday and I was down in the basement trying to clean up, helping my sister unpack when the atmosphere suddenly felt ominous, like something bad was about to happen. We were listening to music, dancing around, and watching the kids play with their toys. I don't remember exactly what I was doing at the time, but it felt like someone or something had touched the back of my neck. But I turned around to swat away at the person, because I thought it was my sister. My family likes to play jokes on each other as often as possible, especially when the other person isn't expecting it. Again, no one was there. I went back to what I was doing, and 5 minutes later, something roughly tugged on the hood of my jacket. There was no one behind me, and that was when I realized that my sister and the kids had went upstairs, and I was completely alone in the cold-ass basement. I grabbed my phone and ran out of the room up the stairs to the kitchen. My sister asked me what the hell happened. I told her and she just shrugged. Yeah, it sounds absolutely insane, but I swear to everything holy that this shit actually happened. The entire summer passed like that. Weird little things happened here and there, but nothing major. My nephew still refuses to sleep in the room because of the man in his closet. My niece developed a liking and disliking of her bedroom. Her closet door would not shut no matter how many times someone would close the door. My niece would play in the room alone during the day, but would wake up in the middle of the night crying and screaming bloody murder until someone would take her out of the crib. I'd given up my bed at that point and let my niece and nephew sleep in it while I slept on the floor. I didn't mind having them in my room with me, considering that it made them feel safe, and my nerves were calmer when it was my responsibility to make sure that they stayed safe and secure. August came around and it was time for me to go to college. I packed up everything I would and needed and headed off for the first time by myself. Mind you, I still didn't have a car, so that was a fun day of moving into my dorms. I figured that college was the perfect time for me to get away from all the weird things happening in that house. Yet the strange things started happening there too. Something had followed me to school, and it eventually took its toll on me. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to a loud banging on the front door of my dorm. I'd go outside to smoke a cigarette, after realizing that no one was there. My roommates and I thought it was just the stupid boys on the football team messing with us, since the girls in the room above us were dating some of them. But that wasn't the case. I didn't go back home for weeks after the first month that I was at college. I liked the fact that I was on my own, and that I had a dorm and room all to myself, while my roommates were at home. The stupid weird shit intensified when I was alone for the weekends. I wouldn't sleep at all and began to miss my morning classes at the start of each week. It got to the point where I tried to avoid going to the dorm room whenever I had a chance. I did not want to be in the dorm room alone after the first month. My roommates and I decided that it was the best idea that at least 2 people stayed for the weekend. That way no one would be alone when the odd things happened. They started noticing the shit too. I mean, how does a computer move around when every person in the dorm room was in class? It doesn't. We were the only 4 people with a key to our room, so there's no way that it was someone trying to play a prank on us. Our closet doors started to slide open during the night. The bathroom faucet would turn on at 3:30 every morning, and all the cabinets and doors would be open when we woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning. My roommates and I had enough of that stupid shit by the time the end of the semester came around. I only attended college for another 1 semester due to reasons that I'm not going to reveal. December rolled around, which allowed me to clear my things out of my dorm room, packed up in the car and headed home for the holiday break. I hadn't really thought much about going back to the house considering I'd been away at school for so long, hanging out with friends that I had made and just generally enjoying the little freedom that I had. However, that all changed when my sister and I pulled into the driveway of the house. That dark, ominous feeling instantly overwhelmed me the second I'd gotten out of the car. I couldn't figure out what it was about that place, but something definitely gave me the creeps, and I sure as hell didn't like it. My sister and I headed into the basement and up the stairs as quickly as we possibly could, in the dark. At this point, my sister was equally eerie about the house since she had strange experiences of her own while I was away at school. There was one night where she was standing outside on the front porch smoking a cigarette when she heard someone say her name. She swears that it sounded like my dad. However, that couldn't be, considering that he had been at least 20 miles away. That wasn't the first time something like that had happened while we were outside. There was another night that we were outside and we both heard laughing coming from below the deck. We looked over the railing with our flashlights, but no one was there. It scared the living hell out of us. We tossed our half-smoked cigarettes over the railing and ran inside. I locked the basement door and each of us went into our rooms and locked ourselves in. Thankfully, the children were in my bed and I didn't mind sleeping on the floor. There was a time that my older sister woke up in the middle of the night due to a bad dream and saw a large black figure standing in the corner of her bedroom. She literally cried while telling me about it the next morning because it scared her half to death. I would often hear strange sounds coming from the basement. It was easy to hear in my bedroom considering that the basement door was 3 feet from my room. I did not like the basement after the ominous feeling began. After the strange sensation that we were never truly alone while down there, it was difficult for me to actually go inside the basement to feed my cats because it always felt like someone was watching me. The basement was freezing, even in the summer, and the air conditioning didn't go down there. We never turned the air conditioning on in the basement and it saved money on electricity bill, but it was always cold. My best friend at the time was spending a few days with me at my house because of personal reasons. It was just the 2 of us in the house at the time. She was taking a shower while I was in the computer room with the door shut. I was on the computer, fairly certain that I was writing a story for at least 10 minutes, when something heavily hit the doors. I could see the shadow of someone from underneath the door. It quickly moved away, which absolutely scared the hell out of me. I waited until my heartbeat returned to normal before quickly leaving the room. I went to the bathroom where my friend was, and I opened the door. No, we had no boundaries, to see if she had been the one who had hit the door, but she was still in the shower, and the carpet was not wet. She hadn't been outside the bathroom, and no one was with us in the house, so there was just one thing left me to think. Whatever the fuck was in the house did not want me there. I personally believe that it was happening because of me. I still don't know how to feel about it. Now, I'm at the point where it doesn't bother me anymore, but seriously, fuck all of that shit. I almost had one normal night in the house. My niece and nephew were at their grandparents' house, so my sister, brother-in-law, and I were sitting on the couch in the living room, watching the movie Sinister. We had no incidences during the entire movie. If we did, then we hadn't noticed. My sister and I cleaned up the coffee table, put the popcorn bowls into the sink, threw away the empty soda bottles, and said goodnight. I turned on the television in my room and locked my door, as I was texting people for about 5 minutes, before someone knocked on the door. I sat there frozen, in fear, waiting to see if I'd hear another knock would come around. Sure enough, it did. I remember cautiously standing up from my bed and opening the door to see that no one was there. Another knock sounded on the door as soon as I'd shut it. I pulled the door back open and slowly walked into the kitchen. I had just reached the kitchen counter when my sister jumped up from behind it. I raised my arm to hit her after jumping because she scared the shit out of me. She laughed for a few minutes, swore that she was going to bed, and watched me walk back towards my room. Her husband jumped out from my nephew's bedroom, which scared me so badly that I let out a banshee-like scream, and literally had to step outside to smoke a cigarette, because my hands were shaking so badly. I had to calm down, and my sister apologized to me while she stood on the back deck and smoked a cigarette with me. We quickly finished, headed inside, and went to our own rooms. I was sitting on my bed for about an hour and a half before the floor outside my bedroom door started to creak. The shadow from the kitchen light pacing back and forth, while the door handle jiggled. My phone was already on vibrate, so I quickly texted my older sister. I asked if she was in the kitchen and messing with me again. She said no. Sent me a picture of her and her husband in the room watching TV, which was absolutely terrifying, because something was outside of my room. I was very relieved when I realized that both doors to my bedroom were locked, as well as the door to my bedroom, because it prevented whatever was in the kitchen from getting into my room, like it so desperately wanted to. That night would be the one that escalated all the strange-ass things happening inside of that house. It's like watching the damn movie had stirred up everything unseen that was living there with us. My nephew continued to be afraid of his room. He still claimed that the man in his closet was there, even though we would check every night before putting him to sleep. One time my older sister had put my niece down for a nap in her crib. My brother and the other sister were there, and we were all watching TV, while my nephew played with his toys on the living room floor. My niece woke up at some point and started crying because she wanted out of the damn room. My sister walked in there to grab her and yelled for the three of us to come to the room. Me, my brother, and younger sister all ran into the room to see a knife sticking in the wall, between the bars of the crib, not more than a few inches above where my niece had been sleeping. Something was trying to harm my innocent little niece. And that was the day we all decided that there was something seriously wrong with the house. Pretty much every night there was late night for me. I'd be up in time for my nephew to knock on my door or crawl into bed with me. My niece soon became afraid of her room. She'd recently switched to a toddler bed by that time. She'd wake up every night, run out of her room, and knock on my end. There was one particular night my sister had to work a 16-hour shift. Her husband was at work and it was storming out quite badly that night. My cell reception was very spotty, and I still didn't have a car despite having a driver's license. My nephew was asleep in my bed, and I too had fallen asleep, only to be awoken at midnight by my niece crying, yelling for me, knocking on my bedroom door, and I jumped up faster than I'd ever done before, opening the door to see that my niece in hysterics sitting on the floor outside my room. I picked her up, shut the door behind me, and laid her in my bed. I soothed her back to sleep before leaving the room. I left the door open, stepped out into the back deck because I could see them, light a cigarette, and texted my sister to see what time she'd be home. My sister texted me back saying that she would be home in about 2 more hours, which was a relief to me. I tucked my phone back into my pocket of my sweatpants and took a drag of my cigarette, only to see 3 shadows walk in front of me from the solar light of the porch. I tossed the unfinished cigarette into the sand-filled flower pot, stepped into the house, and shut and locked the back door behind me. I locked myself in my bedroom with the kids, and not even a moment had passed before I heard the kitchen faucet turn on and the dishes being moved. I slowly opened the bedroom door to see no one in the kitchen. I quickly hurried in there and turned the faucet on before hauling ass to my bedroom. Scooping up the 2 little kids in my arms and carrying them to the computer room, I ran back to my own room, grabbed pillows and blankets, and ran back to the computer room, where I proceeded to lock the door with a lock on the handle and the old-fashioned lock on the top of the double doors. I laid out the blankets and pillows on the floor, placed the kids down, and covered them up. I laid on the couch for hours until I had fallen asleep at some point. I was very thankful that the room had a thick ass blanket hanging over the window to act as a curtain. It was scary. I was in the edge, but there was something about this specific room that made me feel safer. I woke up at 7:30 the next morning to my brother-in-law knocking at the door. I didn't bother to tell him what had happened, just that the kids and I were watching TV in the room and had fallen asleep. I did, however, tell my sister about the incident when she got home, and trust me, she was terrified about the events that had happened because she had come home later than she had told me she was going to due to her job being short on staff members. There had been many times where one of us would see shadow figures in the children's bedroom. Thinking it was my niece or nephew, we would run after them, only to find nothing. This was one of the constant, recurring things that pissed us off. I can remember another day, after the incident when my brother and younger sister were at the house. They were going to stay the night. My niece was taking a nap in her bedroom. My older sister went in to check on her. The blanket that had been draped over my niece was laying on top of the space heater, and her closet door that had been shut was standing wide open. Something wanted my little 2-year-old niece to freeze to death. Something wanted us out of that damn house, and I wish we would have gotten out at that point, but we ended up staying there for another few months. I'm not sure what the fuck was in that goddamn house, but I wish to hell that I never stepped one fucking foot in that place, because I have ghosts in my current house. Something's always after me after moving in out of this specific house. I don't mind the ghosts that I currently live with, because they don't bother me. I know they're there, and that's what matters. I absolutely hated that house. I still do to this day. Hate that goddamn house. I never want to step foot in that place ever again. But my sister's ex-husband, my niece and nephew, their other 2 brothers and their stepmom all live in that house now. I've only been back there a few times to see my niece and nephew. It still gives me the creeps, but they seem to be okay. Like nothing had ever happened. Needless to say, my intuition had been on point since moving out of that freaking house. The moment I got a bad feeling about something or situation, I actively avoid it so that I don't have to deal with the consequences. It doesn't matter whether anyone reading this believes in the supernatural or not, because I do. I have proof of it. What happened in that fucking house still gives me a bad feeling when I think about it, and my nerves are shot from writing all this down. This is legitimately the most horrifying experience I've ever had. Screw that house. And screw ever going back there. I honestly cannot ever go back there, and if I do, please send a priest.
Hey friends, thanks for checking out today's video. If you haven't yet, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to be notified when I drop a new video, or whenever I stream. If you guys want some more behind the scenes action, make sure to follow me on my social media. Links to these will be provided in the description, including my public Discord. Also, if you'd like to support me and the channel, please consider becoming a channel member or a Patreon, where $1 a month gets you early access to all my videos. With all that being said, I want to thank you again, and remember, keep it spooky. Keep it spooky. Haha.